Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to Prof and all the different stakeholders that we have. Professor Mkhize, who is joining us from the Department of Women, Youth and Children in the Presidency. We really appreciate you joining us this afternoon for this conversation. My name is Penny Lebeani, and I'm going to be your facilitator for the conversation this afternoon. It's really my pleasure and honor to be here today. And I'd like to welcome each and every one of you. So what I'm going to do right now is to just introduce the people that we have. I've already mentioned Professor. She's the Deputy Minister in the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities in the Presidency. She was Deputy Minister for Community-Based Human. She's a Deputy Minister. She's worked in community-based human rights areas as well. She established the National Children and Violence Trust, and she works to minimize the impact of violence on survivors and pursuit of prosecution for perpetrators, amongst other things, within the space. I have got to interact with her in different formations as well, one of them being the Progressive Women of South Africa. I also like to welcome Nehwoh Belinda, a feminist, a children's rights activist who's joining us. She has started a career in Cameroon, moved to South Africa. She's been working with POA for the last 10 years. She joined Africa Tikkun and as the gender-based violence program coordinator in 2012. And she's still working within the space at the Otando Center. I also would like to welcome Bongani Ngomane, is the Chief Director of the Department of Social Development, responsible for research, policy development, population development, and stakeholder relations. Worked on the Gauteng Men's Forum and chairperson of SA Men's Awards, amongst other things. Nzama is also joining us on the panel, founded the Boys to Men program in 2011. But most importantly, I think the most important people for today are really the young people who are joining us on the youth panelist, which will also be part of our conversation. Mamiki Masilo, Melusi Ndamo, Morongwa Ramasobane, Nonsegelelo Boy, Sizwe Chabalala, and then I'm going to be getting into detail in regards to all your biographies a little bit later on. So I need to start this conversation and say to you that I've been in broadcasting for about 70, well, wow, since I was 17. So my earliest memory of conversations about gender-based violence is when I first got onto radio at about the age of 17 and 18. And fast track to that, run about 2000 and 2010, I was hosting, a women's show called Motswako. I extensively had to deal with that conversation. And those first 12, 13 years, of my broadcast career, it was like, you are talking to yourself when you start saying, you throw a word like femicide and everyone is like, what is that? That's just random. It doesn't happen every now and again. I grew up in Soweto, so I knew of stories of like, a woman being killed by her husband. But at the same time, I grew up in the township, went to school there. I knew about jack rollers. I knew about, girls being abducted, from school and all of that. And when I came into radio, without even realizing, I found myself being, a voice of some sort, an activist, even if I didn't understand what that meant at the time. Until obviously when I got to do a show like Motswako, then had to deal with a lot of those issues, but from a woman's point of view. And I recall when I was doing that show saying, we can't keep having this conversation about gender-based violence as ourselves as women, because most of the time we're victims. And I can make reference to a few stories that I remember. I remember the story of the daughter of one of the funeral parlors in Soweto, the Kupani family losing their daughter at the hands of a lover. I remember the story of Dupsy, and those just were like the public stories. I'm not going to talk about the private stories in my own personal life. And then comes the fatigue after that. It's like you've spoken about it, you've attended so many seminars, you know about what POA is trying to do. At the particular time, there were few organizations. And then fast track, 10 years later in 2020, which is where we're sitting, and then I'm sure all of you sitting here, you know about the stories of when we first heard of like a 2-month-old baby being raped in Kimberley, the trauma that we all went through in the media publicly, up to the recent cases of a 8-month-old woman, who was killed, just in the west end of Johannesburg here. And we all had our hands on our heads, and then we were asking ourselves, what is that? But then it gets even more, then just as recently as last 2 weeks ago, the shooting of 2 women in Polokwane, on a Saturday morning, and you're asking yourself, what do we do? What do we say? So I've been through so many fatigue episodes personally, where I'm like, am I not making any difference? Is this conversation not moving forward? Who else needs to come to the party? The most encouraging thing of late is seeing men like Ndate Bongani, with Nicholas, and all the other men who are sitting in this panel, and maybe organizations like Act Now and others who are coming to the party, who are starting to contribute to the bigger conversation, which, as I said, it's a conversation that I was saying 10 years ago. Why can't we see this happening? But then at the same time, we saw when the president sat with a group of women and organizations last year, it reached really a heartbreaking point where we really all felt helpless. So if I'm going to explain what is gender-based violence, for me, it's trauma. I am exhausted. It's fatigue. It's bigger than apartheid as far as I'm concerned, because of what we're dealing with right now. But if I'm going to use the English dictionary, I don't know, maybe for just purposes of like, what is it? So it's violence that is directed at an individual based on his or her biological sex, gender, identity. It includes physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse, threats, coercion, economic and educational deprivation, whether occurring in public or in private. And if I look at that, we only trying to explain and come to terms with psychological abuse. Personally, I've never had anyone bruise me physically. I have no blood to show. I've had no, scars of physical, somebody hitting me for me to show. But I can tell you about the emotional scars and the psychological impact of the abuse that I have experienced. And trying to explain that based on my personal experiences has been a nightmare. Actually, I've been triple victimized for that. And I'm sure it's a story that a lot of psychological victims even have to deal with. So now, firstly, when you've been abused physically, you have to deal with a physical, psychological aspect of it and the physical aspect of it. And we are constantly struggling to have this conversation. I am a mother of a 15-year-old. I'm trying to get him to understand coercion. I don't even know if I'm like even not breaking, certain boundaries in making sure that he gets it. And as a sister to a 27-year-old brother and a 47-year-old, a 42-year-old brother as well, I feel like, do they get it? What have they done to other people? How have they exerted violence, psychological or physical, on others? But we're constantly having this conversation. But the most heartbreaking thing that we're witnessing of late is how the perpetrators of violence are getting younger than 30. But more than anything else, they're becoming more and more violent. So from a mother, from a sister's point of view, from a citizen of the country, from a broadcaster, from all aspects and spheres of influence that I occupy, I'm fatigued, I'm exhausted. I don't know how do we have this conversation. But what is exciting today is that we have young people, who have different ideas, who are experiencing this differently. And I'm hoping that today we're going to be able to get to that. So with that, that is really my introduction and my brief for this afternoon. So I would like everybody to feel that, your contribution is important, your, to participate is important and all of that. So without wasting even more time, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with the deputy minister and just say, what is the state, of our response as a government, as a country, in regards to where we're sitting with gender-based violence? Because I can tell you, as somebody who's on radio every day, who's speaking in different forms, everybody says, but the government is not doing anything. But the government is not doing anything. Is there fairness to that tone, or and what do we need to understand, and how exactly is the government responding in this instance? Prof is gonna have to unmute herself. Okay, there.
Yeah, I did. Is it slow?
Okay.
It's too low. Is it okay?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay. No, good afternoon, Penny. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much. I think the way you have set a tone, it sends a clear message as to what is the conversation all about. I think it's good to bring it to our level, not to mystify it or to make it an academic exercise. It's real, it's what we deal with on a daily basis. Those who are in the media space, they communicate constantly what is going on in our courts. In simple terms, I fully agree with what Penny has said. Just recently at the Orange Farm, we've seen cases of 14-year-olds disappearing, mothers crying, young women of 16-year-old and around at Umthwaliume disappearing, being found dead, brutally assaulted, some raped, in virtually all our communities. So the public's perception that government is not doing much, it might be really an outcry, which is saying to government, enough is enough. Do whatever it takes to stop the scourge. And of course, we know, all of us sitting here as activists in the space, it takes more than government to tackle any form of violence in a community. I have experience in informal settlements. Penny introduced me as a founder member of the National Children and Violence Trust. Those of you who are from Diepsloot, Honeydew, virtually all the police stations in that area, they are mandated by our team. Basically, it was a civil society response to look at what was going on in that community, children disappearing, young women being raped, the police stations not responding. But coming back quickly to what has government done, there has always been a position taken by government that we have these 365 days of activism where we should pick up and talk more and protest and express our feelings about violence against women and girls.
Okay, so we lost our Prof there for a little bit, but that's fine. So we sort of like got the sense of that it's an outcry. The public is saying enough is enough. But before we move further, let me bring in Morongwa to do a presentation for us. Morongwa, she is an associate at PwC Advisory South Africa. She's part of the Young Urban Women Movement at Wings of Life Center in Diepsloot. Morongwa is also the Gauteng Child Ambassador in the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament and is passionate about child protection and eradicating gender-based violence. Now, so Morongwa is briefly going to give us a sense of what young people in Diepsloot face in relation, to the challenges and the impact of gender-based violence on their daily lives. So Morongwa, we are all ears.
Thank you very much, Penny. I would like to greet everyone. I'm very grateful to be part of this conversation and glad that I could be able to represent millions of young people out there that are not heard. I was born and raised in Diepsloot, which is an informal settlement just near Fourways and Dainfern, where you grow up and you get used to seeing a man hitting a woman and seeing young people growing up with that mentality. And now for you to be going to a young man and telling them that gender-based violence is not okay, or telling them that a woman is equal to them, sounds like something that is out of the curriculum for them, because they were raised by violence. They were born and bred by violence. And these are the things that when speaking about GBV, I feel like we overlook them because now we just go straight to pinpointing that this is wrong, this is right, you shouldn't be doing this and you shouldn't be doing that. We haven't been able to go deep within the issue to unravel what caused it, why is this person's thinking mentality like that? Why is this person behaving like that rather? And last week while I was doing research for this event rather, I came across horrifying videos, Penny, where you see actually young women also raising boy kids and exposing them to violence. This other video, a young woman was kissing sexually the son that was almost 4 years old, and you tend to think that this child is going to grow up with such a mentality, and this child is going to go to school to grade 1 or ECD, where this child starts kissing other young girls without their permission because it's been done to him forcefully. And it's now up to us to remember that if we allow such behaviors to go through our communities, this is merely us allowing gender-based violence. Because when this young man grows up and start victimizing young girls and start raping and start hitting women, then when you start telling them that it is wrong, then we actually conflicting ourselves because we are allowing this violence to be within the communities. And violence, Penny, is not something that starts today. You have laws that previously have been allowing violence. Our grandparents, our fathers have been raised by violence, Penny, where there's dowry violence, where people believe that because you're a woman and I've been marrying you and now you're the mother of my kids, I have every right to hit you. I have every right to not listen to you. I even have the right to even go at an extent to saying, because you're a woman, you're not going to work. You're not going to chase your careers. You're not going to chase your dreams. And these are the things that we've been tolerating, and we haven't been stagnant enough also as women to be saying, because we do not want to be violated against, we are also not going to let things pass. I feel like it's also about the accountability from the government to also assist in empowering young women, into making young women understand that as much as this is what was inflicted to you previously, this is not what we're going to allow to be going onwards. We should now get to a norm where we understand and face the reality that women are dying every day, women and children are dying every day, where gang rape is rating at about 50%. And the thing that makes hard for us to eradicate GBV as a whole is that cases are not reported, because what is abuse is not abuse to probably someone next to me. Now I even have to second question the abuse being done to me before I even go to the police station, because if someone telling me I have a huge butt and I explain it to a person within the same society and saying, I feel victimized by this person, and that person does not see it as abuse, that person does not get to respect my feelings, firstly as a person before as a woman, then now it's a problem. And also as women, we need to also be aware of the fact that if you're saying we are going to fight against gender-based violence, if you're going to say we are equal to men, then we shouldn't be manipulative about it. Why do I then need to be equal to a man in a workplace? But the moment I have 10 plastics of groceries and I need to go home and the man is asking me help, mostly because he thinks I'm weak, then now we're having a problem. Because we shouldn't let it slide at some point and allow it to not happen at some point. Because I feel if a man tells a woman that you cannot fix a tap and a woman lets it slide because that is one task from her list, then we are going to have a problem. We need to be very consistent about the statement and get to face these realities. I grew up in Deep Sloot where young people get pregnant, where young women are actually now not even getting along themselves when seeing other young women that make it, because this is not what they were raised to do. Patriarchy has gotten to a point where women are allowing to sit at home and do nothing and being violated by all these men and the society at large, because they feel like there's no hope. Penny, we've been crying for years and years where there are adverts on TV. We have 16 days of activism, but nothing is happening. And I feel like for us to now bring solutions of gender-based violence is for us to agree that we are the problem. Both, not only men, both women and men are the problem.
All right, I like where you landed there, and I think with that, as I said earlier on, that I got to a place where I got tired, and personally, I'm saying, where the man? Because I've heard from Professor Hlengiwe, I've heard from you, I've stated my case, so I want to hear from the men who are joining us. And Bongani Ngomane, who's on the panel. He is the Chief Director in the Department of Social Development. And then I'd like also Nick to also join in, like back to back. So I'm going to start with Bongani, and I'm saying, from what Professor has said, from what Morongwa has said, and from what I have said, what is the responsibility, of men in this times that we're living in, with the stats, the way that they're sitting, with the questions that Morongwa is asking, the systematic impact that we're dealing with, the rising of numbers, the number of victims who are women and children constantly every day. And we're not also negating the fact that Black men are violent towards themselves. But before we even address it from that point of view, but because we're talking gender-based violence here, and women are victims in the majority, I'd like you guys lead in the work that you do in the department when it comes to men, their role, being part of the solution, and carrying the half. If we are equally responsible for the numbers of how things we're seeing, even though the women victims are higher, what is their role, and what is a South African man thinking with what's going on right now?
Thanks a lot, Sis Penny, for facilitating, and it's a pleasure to interact with you once more. We had a session before in another platform sharing the same issues. But from where I come from as a man and also as part of Gauteng government, I think Morongwa has captured the causes, because the problem with us, I think in South Africa, is that we deal with the effects rather than with the causes. Morongwa has really outlined it very simple and clear for us to understand that the element of socialization plays an important role on how the child is socialized to interact with other people and to value and view other people generally. So I will say it is important for us as government to deal first with the cause, and the causes will go directly to our educational system. I'm happy that Prof had a stint as a leader of a Department of Education at some time. Our educational system should talk to these issues. We should have, for example, in our curriculum, peace studies, so that when a child grows up, he's taught what is peace from a young age, even at the early childhood development stage or at crèche level, so that then living peaceful is drilled into their.
Oh, there goes technology being jealous of us again. Okay, Bongani, because he's struggling there with the network. So I'm going to move on to Nicholas, and then I'll come back to you. But Nicholas, let's hear from you. Nick and Nzama, you founded the Boys to Men program in 2011. It was initiated to look at the challenging and often confusing journey boys make, in becoming young men. So the programs, is detailed in terms of what you do. But to the same question that I asked, Bongani earlier on, your thoughts on where we are right now and the role of an ordinary South African man and in being part of the solution. What do you think their role can be currently?
Okay. Penny, thanks. Look, it's a very complex situation we find ourselves in, because we as society have dealt with the problem and without dealing with the root causes or even looking at the root causes of the problem. And when you even try to actually say some of the root causes are this, then you are told you are making excuses, because everybody wants to make politically correct statements when it comes to this issue. And I think that is one of the biggest problems. And, you know, one of the main things that we need to look at is how men are socialized in society. Morongwa actually addressed some of the issues, you know, the things that are said to be manly, the things that are said to be socially acceptable, which are very wrong. You know, I always like to bring it home with looking at, take a simple thing like being present as fathers in our kids' lives. You know, we can overlook that and we can make all the excuses there are in the world, but a child needs both their parents, you know, to be raised. And in one way or the other, as much as a mother can play a key role in raising a child, but there's a role that the father needs to play. And you find that there's a lot of problems that are created because we as fathers are not present in our kids' lives. I'll give you an example, a living example. I've got a son who's doing a 25-year prison sentence at the moment. My son, when he was 14, he had a very good relationship with one of his teachers, and we all assumed it was a straightforward student-teacher relationship. And he would often even visit his teacher at home, because he's a child that I had before before I was married. So he's not from my marriage. So, you know, his mother would assume he's with me, I would assume he's with the mother, and so on and so forth. But cut the long story short, only to find my son then goes on to end up driving this lady's car, this teacher's car, and then we tried to fight it, and then eventually the teacher got suspended from school. The female teacher got suspended from school, and the following year, when he was 19, my son and his friends murdered the teacher. You know, they murdered the teacher, and only when the teacher was murdered, then we found out, oh, she was actually sleeping with him and his friends from the age of 14. So, you know, I look back now and I think, had I been closer to my son, had I listened, had I been more present in his life, would this have happened? Number two, I would have never, not in a million years, allowed my daughter to go visit a male teacher, you know, at his place for one reason or the other, for no reason whatsoever. So there's a lot of things in my science issue that I've learned and have actually made me want to focus more on the boy child as on how we're raising the boy child, because we tend not to listen to our boys and their issues. We tend to just overlook and think, no, boys can take care of themselves. Boys are fine. Where else boys are picking up a lot of things in society out there. You know, you then now, in my program, when you speak to a lot of young boys, you find that a lot of young boys are actually being molested. The same issue that was raised by Morongwa again, of a young boy being kissed by a mother or cousin. I saw that same video as well. When you actually raise this issue, with a lot of men, you find that a lot of men and a lot of young boys actually had their first sexual experience with an older woman as a young boy. So they grow up not respecting sex. They grow up not respecting women, because they think, you know, at sex is just something that you play with. So, and until we start actually addressing and looking at the way we're raising and socializing a boy child, and also accepting that it's not okay. You know, this thing of which, oh no, in Zulu we even say, Professor Mkhize will know this, in Zulu they even say, Ingubendali lalingane. I mean, what nonsense is that? Because we're trying to promote it, oh no, when a young boy has got an older woman, it's a macho thing to do. No, it's not.
Okay. All right, Nicholas, thank you so much for sharing with that with us, because that also just brought it even closer to home. So I want to bring a young man, a 16-year-old from Alexander. He grew up watching his mother being physically abused by his father, and he's since forgiven his father and is committed to using his experience to become a better man. MESULI Ntamo is 16. So we're talking about the socialization of a young man and how that is part of the cause. And in South Africa, we have a tendency of dealing with the end part of the situation. So let's understand from Melusi's point of view. He's a 16-year-old in the streets of our townships. You know, in his world, what is the story with gender-based violence based on his experience and his peers? What kind of conversations are they having? I mean, yes, you've had a personal experience, and you want to be the change. But what are generally, you know, the conversations that young people are having in regards to that? You know, are young men socialized differently? And if so, what is your understanding of that as a young man today? Is it MESULI or Melusi? Because it says MESULI on your screen.
It's MESULI.
Oh, okay. So why did they call you Melusi here? Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Open your ears so I could shove them with wisdom. Cleanse your eyes and prepare for abundant vision. Allow me to break the chains of mental slavery and place you out to a journey of equality and peace. Great afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is MESULI Ntamo, a poor boy by birth and a revolutionist by choice. Today, allow me to introduce you to my reality, my pain, my struggle, my society. Gender-based violence is the unlawful use of violence against an individual because of their gender. Respect, Ubuntu, love, and peace are being brutally taken away from us. Life used to be sweet, but now it's just pleasure full of cavities, a ride full of tragedies. Tribulations, sins, and flaws rob us our destiny. Every day, someone in Alex gets killed by their spouse. Every day in Alex, someone is being savagely beaten by their spouse. Not only that, people no longer know unity. Violence has become a language. Everyone is affected by gender-based violence, from young girls to old civilians. Who will be left to run around our streets when our siblings are being forced to stay in the closets of fear? Gender-based violence has taken away privilege, dignity, and freedom. And on top of it all, it has stolen our identity and left us with confusion. Who shall lead in the future when my peers are being depleted? We are caged in, afraid to express ourselves because judgment is in every horizon. Cases of Thabo Mashatugwa of the LGBTQI+ will scare the flesh out of your skeleton. Cases of Jabulile Nkosi will make you ashamed of being a person. How many more have to suffer? How many more have to die in order for you to make a move? Children now have to rely on drugs for company while you are out there preaching democracy. What is the point of democracy when we are being taught to walk in the shadow of death? What is the point of electing leaders when we can't lead ourselves to respect, love, and equality? In the street of Alex, beating a woman is a cool thing to do, where swearing at a transgender person is a normal thing to do. We need you as leaders to share your morals, to give a hand and help us mold the future. Help us know the real definition of equality and freedom. We ask, when we are scattered and divided, which nation shall you lead? We pledge for justice for every single victim out there. The evolution must start now. It doesn't have to be big. Just a program that gives information to fellow brothers and sisters struggling in the midst of GBV would make a huge difference. Our fathers, uncles, and mothers have become rapers. They have become slaves of addiction. As the youth, who are we supposed to look up to? As the youth, we are misdirected, confused, and unaware of what the future holds. We don't know which roles to occupy as society has its own savage level. Prostitution rings, crime sprees are topping our charts, all because we want to soothe the pain. Young boys now have to become bullies to reflect their inner pain. Depression has now become an art. The norm of today has burdened us with nothing but fear on our shoulders. Young pupils have to become killers in the name of self-defense. Who will groom the leaders of tomorrow when our leaders are active participants? Most people are afraid to voice out because they love the person behind the knife. All that is left in our community is shattered teeth, broken souls, and deceived brains. When we are left with no purpose to live, many commit suicides because they can't bear to walk down this road full of thorns.
Okay, MESULI, you just took this conversation to another level. What I'm going to do, I'm going to, finish going through the panel. Nehwoh Belinda, I think let me bring you in, and then I'm going to do the rest of the youth panelists to continue our conversation. So Nehwoh, you're a feminist and a children's rights activist. You started your career in Cameroon and you moved to South Africa and working with people opposing women and children abuse women abuse for over 10 years. And you joined Afrika Tikkun as a gender-based violence program coordinator in 2012. So you are at Utando Center. You've been listening into the conversation so far, from the government's point of view, the men's organization, and MESULI just gave us a very detailed presentation of you can call it the state of mind, really, of what is going on. But you've been in the space earlier, and you're still in the space right now of dealing with gender-based violence victims. Where are we in this discussion, and how do we even take it forward if there is a forward that we can go, Nehwoh?
Thank you very much, Penny, and thank to all our panelists for honoring this invitation from Afrika Tikkun. I really want to thank our young people for representing thousands of young people out there. They usually do not get the chance to meet the caliber of people that are part of this panel. And being a gender activist for over 17 years now, the story it sounds like the same story that we are talking about every day. We just move from one campaign to the next. The deputy minister spoke about 300 and the first campaign that we had, which is the 365 days. And now the president has the gender-based violence committee that is working on all of these issues, but it sounds like things are getting worse. We're not sure if people are just reporting now, but I think the solution really lies in the hands of the young people. That's what Afrika Tikkun is saying, that young people need to be brought into this conversation. Someone mentioned that if you go to the jail now, you see it's young people that are committing this crime. If you see the type of rape that happens now, gang rape, it's getting more violent, and the various groups wanting to be I don't know if they want to be the perfect rapist, using all type of objects to inflict pain on women and children. So I think that it is time that we bring in those who are part of the problem to be part of the solution. We cannot sit in parliament and make decisions while young people like Melusi in Alex grew up witnessing this, knows that his peers part of this, and they sit in different forums and they discuss these issues. We need to bring them in so that they can be part of the solution. I'm just glad that they have this opportunity to talk to the deputy minister and the people that are really out there. And I'm just hoping that this conversation doesn't end here. We get more young people to be involved. Thank you very much, Penny.
Thank you so much, Nehwoh. All right, let me bring in Sizwe Shabalala. You're a facilitator and a motivational speaker, former alumni, secretary of Afrika Tikkun. You're currently studying project management and a vocal opponent of GBV. You're passionate about cooking and making a difference in the community. So talk to me about your passion and share with us your presentation with us for today.
Good afternoon, everyone, to the panel, and to everyone at large. So thank you very much, Penny. So I am Sizwe Shabalala. So I'm passionate about cooking. But then when I grew up, when my mother used to teach us to cook, I to get furious and say, hey, why is she teaching us how to cook and so forth? But then after so many years, I'm actually thanking her for that, because now I love this. I love cooking. So it's part of me. I have nothing against cooking. So we are dealing with an issue that is gender-based violence. Myself, I'm from Orange Farm, and not so long ago, we heard about a 6-year-old Simpiwe Mkhize that was murdered. We also heard about an 8-year-old Mpho Makondo, 5-year-old Mzwandile Zita, and also a 3-year-old Ansia Kea. So it pains me to see these things happening in my community, actually. And it also bothers me because I don't want my daughter to grow up in such a society. I panic the moment she leaves the house and says she wants to go play outside. Because of the things that are happening in our community. So I really don't want my child to grow up in such a community, because it's dangerous. As Mam Nehwoh mentioned, it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. What is it that can be done? What is the problem? And as a matter of fact, it affects a lot of young men, and it affects them emotionally. They are battling with their emotions. I want to dwell there on the part that says it affects a lot of young people. So the problem there is that I want to believe that as a young person, it's because of self-discovery. A lot of young men that undergo or inflict GBV, it's because of self-discovery. They don't know who they are. So as we empower young women, can we also empower young men in our communities so that they know who they are, they know what a man is. So a man is not about having money. Manhood is not about having a lot of money, having powers, because you'll get involved with a woman that has money, more money than you. Then what then is going to happen? You end up getting angry, and now what you're saying, this woman is disrespecting you because she has more money than you. So manhood is not about having money. It's about it's a character. It's a transition from being a boy to being a man. It's a character. You learn how to become a man. It's a process. So we must also teach young men from our communities in Orange Farm as well to become better men. And we can also say that a boy, when he's done wrong, he will seek revenge. But when you're talking about a man, manhood, a man seeks forgiveness instead, so that they can fix whatever is wrong. Or in Orange Farm, you find that young men inflict violence because of they grew up seeing it happen and nothing was done. So also in their eyes, it's okay to do so. Also taking advantage of the young women out there. Maybe some women are not reporting it because they are fully dependent on the guy. So the guy is telling himself that, okay, she will stay and she will not report me because she's dependent on me with everything. So it's a problem, and we need to deal with it. Mr. Bongani also mentioned, and also Mr. Nicholas mentioned also, that we should focus on the cause instead of the results. We should go back and address what is it that really caused all of this. Since it's caused by human beings, it can be solved by human beings. So it is possible for this thing to be eradicated. However, it can take more. It can take a few years for us to get there. Also, the government, we feel that at some point that the government is not doing enough, because we see people being reported, cases are opened, but then the following day or months after, you see the very same person that inflicted GBV walking on the streets, roaming out there free. So then that's why we feel that the government is not doing sufficient to deal with this matter. Also, we feel that the SAPs are also not doing enough about dealing with this issue. So if it takes a village to raise a child, then I'm sure and I'm confident that it can take the whole nation to deal with this GBV matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sizwe. I forgot that you're sitting right here next to me because, you know, everybody's over there, but there you are. All right. What I would like to do now is I want to bring in Nontsikelelo because she is a young person who is currently studying at Cape Peninsula University of Technology. She's also a debate coach from the Western Cape Schools Debating Board. She runs I Made a Difference. It's called IMAD, a campaign she started with her friends to collect study material, donate them to matriculants. So I think the mix of young people that we have here today are a true representation, you know, of the challenges that we faced with around gender-based violence. Because you were mentioning, Caesar, the stories coming out of Orange Farm. So when someone like Nontsikelelo comes on, what comes to mind is all the young women who were violated in the campuses, you know, whether it's University of Cape Town, the story of, you know, the rogue rape in Fort Hare that comes to mind, the story of I remember there's a story of a young woman who studied in Grahamstown, I remember, who was raped by her boyfriend and then came home and committed suicide because she didn't get any help, you know, coming out of the school. And then there's a story of a young woman who was murdered, I think, in Umtata as well, recently, in like 3 months or so ago. She also went home, broke up with someone, and, you know, the mother of the boy that she was dating saying to her, well, you know how difficult he is, you know, just pretend you're in a relationship with him. And that young man actually murdered that, you know, that young woman. And the names are too many, you know, to remember, but the stories remain, you know, I can tell you that. And that's also a result for me with the work that I do, because every day there's a new story that one has to constantly deal with. But that's the reality is those are children who went to school to get an education, to study, and then their lives took a different turn because of the violation that they experienced. Okay, so Nontsikelelo, talk to us, you know, from that point of view. You're in Fuleni, but you're studying, you know, in Cape Town. So from you as a young woman's point of view. Go ahead, Nontsikelelo, we're listening.
I didn't hear the question.
Well, it's for you to share your presentation with us and from your experience as a young woman, you know, who is from Mfuleni, but you're studying, you know, at a campus in Cape Town. Obviously, your experience of gender-based violence, you know, in that kind of setting, brings other dynamics to the bigger conversation that we're having as a country. I mean, you can answer specifically to that, or you can also share with us what you've prepared.
Okay, good afternoon to everyone. And yeah, as you have said, I'm from Fuleni. So as a young woman, I feel as though that our existence as women is constantly denied to us, our very own, like the basic rights that we have as women, we are constantly denied those. I can't wake up just one morning as a young woman and decide that, you know what, I just feel like jogging. I can't decide that in the midst of studying in the afternoon, like at night, oh, you know what, I'm stressed, let me just take a walk and take a breather, because I'm a young woman. And like walking at night obviously poses a risk for me as a young woman. And actually, I am from the University of Cape Town and not CTUT. So as someone who recently went to the University of Cape Town, knowing that there was the case of Uyinene in UCT last year, it was very scary for me to go there, because I don't know. Obviously, it made me even more scared, because a young person died while she went to university, while she went to an institution of learning. And as you mentioned, I am from Fuleni, which is also one of like the top 30 gender-based violence hotspots. And it's a township that is very near to Delft, which is #1 in the nation, in the country. Is the #1 gender-based violence hotspot in the country. And in Fuleni, nothing I say here today is going to be new. The stories that I might tell today are stories that every young woman who is in Diepsloot, either in Hillbrow, either in Alexandra, is going to relate to, even if they've never came to Mfuleni. But when I tell these stories, they'll be like, you know what, I feel as though I've been there, because these stories, all these stories are the same. And it's a continuous thing, it's a continuous cycle. You see, in Mfuleni, we face a lot of problems. First of all, we have this huge problem of the police station, which is something basic into trying and finding justice for survivors and victims of gender-based violence. Our very own police station, which is meant to protect us, is actually a 48 minutes walk away from Mfuleni. Actually, from like the Mfuleni Center, the Afrika Tikkun Mfuleni Center, which is at the center of Mfuleni, which means that even like for people that live far away from the center, it's even more far from them. So meaning that a lot of people do not have access to the police station. That means that justice in itself is inaccessible for survivors and even for victims of gender-based violence. Let's say even in an instance where a survivor actually has to take that 48-minute walk to the police station, chances are when she walks, she has to cross these bushes because it's not actually like a clear road. So chances are there are chances that she'll be victimized again. There are chances that she might be killed along the road, along the way into going to try and find justice. And we have a problem which everyone is aware of: the second-hand victimization of survivors in police stations, in institutions that are supposed to help these survivors when they report these cases, where like people are asked what they were wearing. It is very common. That is something that we know. And there's also issues where when women go and report rape cases, or when they report being beaten up by their partners in police stations, like policemen rather tell them they should go and sort out their issues at home, and which those are things that aren't supposed to be happening. In Flynn, we had the case last year in 2019 of a 16-year-old young woman who was brutally killed and was left for dead in the road. We were working on that project and following up on that case. What we found was that this young woman was with her friend. Her friend was the witness to this case. And her friend right now had to stop going to school because she cannot go to school because the perpetrator is out there and the perpetrator wants to kill her. What does that mean? That means as I've said before in my when I was opening up, our existence as women is denied to us. We can't practice our basic rights because we are being victimized, and it's very sad that the justice system has failed that woman. Not only has it failed that woman, but it has also failed the witness in itself, and has also failed other young women, because this person now has the chance to actually victimize other young girls, to continuously victimize other young girls. Right? And also, I think we also face this whole problem of rape culture. Like, rape culture stems a lot in our communities. We have normalized rape culture. When a boy cat calls you as a young woman, when you walk down the road, it's deemed as normal. No one sees it as something wrong. There's also this concept of winning girls over. For instance, when people go out and drink and have drinks in taverns, they can go and like men go and sleep with young women who are drunk, and that is rape in itself, because it's in the form of coercion. We have normalized such things. People feel as though it's normal to sleep with young girls who are under the influence of alcohol, and that is problematic. It's very problematic, and we need to stop that. And it's very hard because people really believe in these things. And also, I feel as though the schooling system is continuously failing us. And it's something that has been mentioned before, that the schooling system is constantly failing us. People, like a lot of children, spend most of their time in schools because their parents are working, right? So they spend a lot of time in schools. It is like the basic things in schools that are failing us, that are continuously failing us, and that are also creating perceptions to young people. Because young people, first of all, like gender norms and gender norms are actually stem from the interactions that we have as people, right? So for instance, like in Mfuleni, I know that even the school that I went to, the high school that I went to, if as a young woman, you identify as, you are a young woman in the biological sense, but then you don't identify as a young woman, you are still not allowed to wear pants. You have to wear dresses, even though you don't identify as a young woman. And I feel that is problematic, because also sex education, that is something that is lacking in the schooling curriculum. And that is something that is very important in trying to fight gender-based violence, and also trying to fight the norms that are within societies. We don't have gender studies in the schooling curriculum. We don't have sex education, and those things, I believe are the most important aspects in trying to eradicate gender-based violence, in trying to solve the perceptions that we have as a society, and trying to raise children that will not actually engage in gender-based violence. We have people like LGBTQI+ people. Those children are not actually they are not accommodated for in the curriculum. They're not accommodated.
Okay. All right. So Nontsigelelo, so impassioned there in your plea, in your presentation. I fully appreciate that. So what I would like to do, you touched on really some important points. I think from what Nick spoke about earlier on, about peace studies, addressing the root causes, gender studies in schools, as well as sex education. I want Professor to come in, but I don't know what's going on there on the screen, because I just wanted to get the different voices in the room, and I think we've covered that so far, except for one, which is Mamiki. I'm going to get, who's part of the youth panel, to get in, so that all of us can then really have this robust conversation where we can take questions and we can see if the professor can respond, and then with Nicholas, as well as with Bongani from the different organizations who are sitting on the actual panel to answer to some of those questions. So I don't see Professor there now. So I don't know, because I wanted to go to her. Okay, she's back. Okay, so Professor, I want you to sort of try, I don't know how, you're going to respond to some of the things that have been put on the floor. The education system is brought into the fore in regards to what children are being taught. The justice system, as well, in terms of how the perpetrators are treated, the perpetrators versus the victims, and that's a conversation that we've been having for years. And then there's also talk of we need to have gender studies in schools. I know that you're very strong as well in regards of advancements of women from that point of view. So listening to the myriad of points that have been brought in, especially from the young people that have presented, from a government's point of view, it's a big task and it's a big ask in regards to how can the government lead this conversation so that we can be able to get to a solution of some sort. But obviously this is not abdicating the responsibility of communities. How do we balance that out?
Yeah, maybe just quickly, I'm glad you gave me an opportunity, because the outcry which is before us now, if I were to go to another meeting, it will be the same story. Basically, I need to acknowledge the pain and suffering of young women in particular, and women in general. It has been overwhelming, and South Africa seemed to be the worst country in the continent, because we are speaking out, we are open about it. When we meet with other people from the continent, they say it's a taboo. You cannot raise this question. But basically, I just want to quickly raise a few points. You are all familiar with that high-level seminar, which was led by the president himself, initially led by Total Shutdown and other group, but it was mainly young people. The point I want to raise, that it was in the main, it was young people who spoke out and said, Mr. President, you are new, we want to give you a mandate. And he responded by holding that seminar. They put quite a number of, out of that seminar, the discussions, there were quite a number of recommendations. One of them was that President host immediately the steering committee that will work to tell us what concrete steps will be done by government and civil society. And after that, he went to Parliament. He mobilized all leaders. They had a high-level debate of the emergency action plan to say, while this civil society is working on what is the plan, what will be new, then all political parties, the leaders, committed themselves in different ways. But during lockdown, the president himself, he said, we have one pandemic, which is COVID-19, but the second one is GBV and F, because there were cases which showed that something has gone extremely wrong during the lockdown. But basically then, we are sitting with a national strategic plan, which was accepted by all parties, by government and everybody, to say there are actions that we must take. One of them, the pillars of this, I'm not gonna say all of them, at a national level, we had to start looking at the police stations, that they must be conducive to reporting cases. Remember, in the past, you'll walk in and the cold policeman will ask you, who raped you? What were you wearing? What time of the day? Have you been drinking? But then the police had to work on that, and they report regularly in all the portfolio committees. But then also the court had started the sexual offenses courts, and they had stopped somewhere. The Minister of Justice reported the expansion to more areas. The police further recruited more police, more training was done. So those are just the things that have been done between 2018 and this year. And of course, the president said all the cases which were not taken up, remember, with poor policing, people will report, nobody will investigate. So they are picking up all the cases. But also, the most important thing about this dialogue, the president himself endorsed the theme that we had in August, that we must have generation equality dialogues, so that older women, they have a dialogue with younger women, older men with younger women, and older and younger boys, so that the whole society is saying enough is enough, no, no. As I'm talking to you today, government had said, let's implement the national strategic plan at a district level, because there, the district is an entry to communities. It's something which was not done in the past. We were talking at a high level. In the past, there was no police station at Diepsloot. The police station is being capacitated, is there because of the voices of civil society to say, we can't go to Rasmia, close to Pretoria, if there's a case at Diepsloot. There's a huge opportunity for young activists to monitor very closely all the key points that government has contributed money to. I mean, for the criminal justice to strengthen the Tutuzela centers, the shelters, the government has spent up to 1.6 billion to do all these things within a short period of time. Why it is being done? Because we need to go beyond the pain and emotions and say, we are this generation. What more do we need to do, which was not done in the past, which will make sure that we stop the scourge? Of course, institutions of higher learning. Here, the participants have raised the issue of the curriculum, safety in our institutions of education. The Minister of Higher Education has issued a policy in line with what we are doing with the criminal justice and everybody, to make sure that in these institutions, they follow all the pillars and set up the systems which will ensure that cases are reported, cases are investigated, And also above everything, one of the pillars of the National Strategic Plan is about saying prevention, prevention, prevention. Wherever we are in our communities, the most painful thing is to emerge when a child has disappeared, a child has been raped, a child has been found dumped somewhere next to the river. We need structures at a community level which will check what is going on, which family is neglecting children, what can be done, is there a mother who is abusing them? We need to do all these things before a mother poisons children. It doesn't start there. If women go to court to protest, it's because the perpetrator is appearing. But when you talk to people at the community level, they will say, oh, we knew this woman used to lock children on their own and sit with us in a tavern almost the whole night. So there's a lot that is happening that we need to look about us as this generation in terms of saying, what can we do in our churches, in our youth clubs, beyond expressing pain, having actual structures that oversee and hold police stations accountable, hold government departments accountable. This morning, I was phoned up by a woman who was not happy. She had gone to renew a driver's license, but she protested. She phoned everybody. Then I had to phone the Minister of Transport. I had to phone the Deputy Minister. We must fight, put up a biggest fight, speak out for whatever is going wrong in relation to gender-based violence, because there is a commitment from the highest level that we must stop the sketch. I don't think we should doubt the sincerity of all leaders of political parties, the EFF, the DA, all those that are registered in Parliament. They have been in agreement. There was even an advert where they were in agreement with President Ramaphosa to say, we are all fully behind you. We will monitor our police stations, we'll monitor our courts. Where there are delays, we'll be the ones to protest and to speak out. So what I'm saying, government has made an effort to step up, but we need to go back, even as we have said, even us in government, to be champions at a local level. I've been a champion at Matole district in the Eastern Cape. Now I'm a champion at Port Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela Bay. But Diepsloot is my home. A child it drowns at Diepsloot, I don't hesitate. I go there, I make sure I'm part of the community and the family. We all have to find a niche of fighting the sketch and holding government accountable as much as we can.
Okay, Professor, the one thing that I still feel that there's not real clarity on it is, what about men? I think one of the things that we started talking about, yes, we understand the importance in empowering of the young women, but there's a cry that's constantly saying we are leaving our boy children behind. And we have a problem of an older generation of men not being able, emotionally capacitated to be able to sing from the same hymn book of where we're singing generationally, to help younger generation of men to come to a place of understanding of how to deal with gender-based violence, how to transcend challenges around women being empowered, having more access to more opportunities versus previously. And I think as Caesar touched on a bit, Nicholas also spoke to that. And then hence the organization and what the men in Gauteng with Bongani are doing. Is there some form of a plan or a conversation so that it counter answers to the demands that the women have made to say, this is what men have to do? How clear is that in terms of like us saying that?
Well, it's clear. There are quite a number of men's organizations now. I can think of one led by Patrick Shai, of men who have been abusers, who have formed created a space for all other male abusers to talk about what they've done and where were they coming from, to talk about their pain and so on. But what is interesting for me, quite a number of religious bodies, not only Christians, Muslims and other ones, they really now have taken up the issue of GBV and femicide as a sketch, and they're talking about it. Sometimes you get invited. When you get there, you find them discussing issues which in the past they would deny. There were many priests who would have abused young people, but the church was always in denial. But as of today, there are quite a number of them. Remember, we used to have the moral regeneration project, which was really not, it had no direction. But now recently, they are taking it up as a platform for men to look at morality and GBV. So there are all sorts of spaces. And of course, even the private sector, there are companies who are sponsoring the work that has been done by civil society and allowing discussions in their own spaces. So it's no longer, it's part of policy now that we should have men's groups. But to be realistic, I think women are advanced. We will have to monitor that very closely because there are also risks. When everybody says, no, this is not a problem, I don't mind, equality is the right thing to go. So even the most conservative, patriarchist will continue with the tendencies in subtle ways of undermining a woman. Somebody here, I don't know whether it was Morongwa, who said we shouldn't allow gaps and lapses because some activists could be very good publicly, but when they get home, they tolerate inequality. In a workplace, they justify inequality and say, although this man is harassing me, I'm not gonna raise it as an issue because I'm here, I'm working for my child. So I think there has been an investment to the women's movement, the feminist movement. We are advanced. All other groups should be monitored closely by us in terms of whether they are pushing the agenda in the right direction. But as I've said, hold each other accountable at all costs.
Thank you, Prof. I think I'm going to take Mamiki Masilo. I've been waiting for you because I just wanted the Prof to speak to that. So you are studying a MA program in public policy management at the University of Johannesburg. So you've also been listening to what everybody has been saying, and then I know I feel you also have some strong points as you are studying here. There's some discoveries that you have come to, which can speak to where we are from, where we currently are, and the possibilities of where we should go. What are your thoughts on what we've covered so far?
First and foremost, I just want to, before I even say my presentation, somebody spoke about public services. I think even when holding people accountable, we need to go back and see that public servants, they work under a policy framework. So we need to go back to the Constitution. What does the Constitution say about policies of how public servants should be servicing the community? Another thing is that we also have such things as the Batupili principles that govern public service. So accountability also goes back to, it's entrenched in our policies in as much as it should be entrenched in our communities as well.
Because it stems from our Constitution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go back to also inclusivity. I've been a part of the Young Urban Women Active Citizens at Utanda Center, and it has exposed me to so many dynamics pertaining to GBV. So most of us come from communities where violence and women abuse against women and children is prevalent. However, the conversations are always dealt in as in these are conversations that should be handled by adults only, and young people are not included in these conversations. So growing up as well, I think the concept of GBV was not as prevalent. We grew up listening to programs, and they would talk about women abuse or domestic abuse rather, and it dealt mainly with women in relationships, abusive relationships and households. So thanks to the work, extensive work that individual activists have done, research institutions have done, in also covering a broader prospect of what GBV is. So now when we look at GBV, it also is inclusive of toddlers, female toddlers that are being raped. It goes to adolescents, young adults, as well as senior citizens, female senior citizens that are also being abused. So gender-based violence is not just a social problem, it's a broader problem. And also somebody spoke about the LGBTQI community. So yes, gender-based violence also deals with that. So it's not just one aspect to it. And Afrika Tikkun has also, organizations and NGOs such as Afrika Tikkun has exposed us to the greater sense of GBV and how it affects us even when it comes to economic access. So we've been, in terms of inclusivity and how other young people can join out there, is that we've been a part of organization, national programs, as well as movements. We've been a part of Safe Cities campaign. Safe Cities is an activist and Action Aid program, which deals with how young women navigate their everyday life around urban areas. So this deals with public transportation, safety in public transportation. It deals with safety in terms of going about business as usual, as well as safety within private spaces. So it also advocates for policies that are gender inclusive and gender responsive. We've also been in conversation with COSATU Women that speaks about women in informal industries that are not protected. So hawkers, so females, young people even, hawkers or people in sex work that are not protected by the Constitution as to how should we protect them as well. So it also shows that gender-based violence not only affects us socially, but also affects the economic access of a woman. And we've been part of total shutdown as well. So total shutdown, everybody knows the 22 demands that were being put forward to government. And we're glad to see that there has been a bit of progress when it comes to the National Strategic Plan on gender-based violence, yes, as well as femicides, as well as the 3 new bills that have been passed over the past few months. So we're glad to see a bit of movement in terms with government, what government is doing. However, as somebody, as Prof spoke, things should also be brought back to grassroots levels. So how do we educate young people about policies that and how they benefit them? And as much as they need to be written on, how do we
okay.
Yeah.
So I think you really hit it where we should be by now, because we have seen that movement with those policies and what government has been trying to do in regards to the time frame of that total shutdown, what happened at time. But the question and where we are, because we're talking to young people today, is that how does that trickle down, and what is the role of those young people on the ground, so that these policies that are being implemented are not sitting at just a high level, sort of a platform. And we obviously are pressed for time. I know that earlier on, Bongani got cut off. I just want him to really speak to some of the issues around men in regards to these new policies and their role, and making sure that young men are not left behind. As much as Professor Mkhize spoke about how, because we are advanced as women, we want men to come to the party, but we can't leave them to their own devices. Are these men organizations exclusively working by themselves? Are they working closely with women organizations? How are they coming to the level of where the conversation is, in regards to policy, so to speak? Because if these policies are being implemented, but men are still trying to deal with, oh, this is how we're raised, it means that they're always going to be playing catch up. So how are we making sure that, we're bridging that no one is left behind in this conversation and in this movement and in this change that we're trying to society? I know it's a long, broad question, but Bongani and Nicholas, if you can just tackle that, for me as we try to get close to an end.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sis Penny. And I'm sorry, my network is very terrible today, but be it as it may, I will say men's movement is a fairly Africa. So normally I would say we spend 80% of time engaging as men, trying to understand each other, trying to teach each men understand where the country is moving. But with the lady, so that then we make point of view. But I must say that we need more interaction on that, because some of these interactions, if they are not properly coordinated, they may end up being out of control, So we will need a clear, concerted effort to ensure that there is conversation between men and women, and these conversations are properly managed. But what I would also like to say, just for me as a closing remark, because of my connectivity, is that as Gauteng government men's movement, we are embarking on a whole mural campaigns. And as I was listening to the youngsters, I was also identifying areas. The whole mural campaigns will talk to gender issues, will talk to GBV, will talk to child empowerment, so that this discussion, it's out there, it's in our eyes, because mass media and social media generally has got a big role to play in this fight against gender-based violence. But if we don't drive it as activists, as organizations, as government, we know that our mass media and media campaign can easily focus on other issues which, from our point of view, may think are cosmetic issues. So we need really as activists to push, and as government to influence public discourse in the public space, especially through media. And that is why we are embarking on this whole campaign.
Okay.
We stop there, and let me thank you who contributed, especially the inputs from the youngsters were eye-opening.
Okay. Thank you, Bongani. I'm going to take Nicholas, and then I'm going to take MESULI. And I just like to note that Matilda had to leave because she's rushing off. So then we're just going to keep it moving. All right, Nicholas, quickly to you.
Okay, first and foremost, I think the dialogue or the engagement with boys, young boys or young men, is very key and very important. Hence we are rolling out camps around the country where it's a dialogue with called Boys to Men. Because as much as you can look at women empowerment, but if you are not getting men mentally prepared for an empowered woman, you've already lost the battle. Because you're going to get an empowered woman coming home to a man who does not know how to handle an empowered woman. So we need to start engaging with our young boys in that conversation on that. And secondly, I feel as if, the emphasis on those dialogues and those engagements, or on boys understanding women's rights, or men understanding women's rights, is actually very undervalued. I had an engagement with one of the government departments where I spoke about boy grooming, my Boys to Men boy grooming program, and they said, but why do we need such a program? Because there are already programs like this circumcision, boys go to the circumcision schools, and that's where boys are empowered. And you just feel this is a civil servant that I'm talking to, a government official who's already got a mandate, and the president has already spoken to this, that we need to look at boys. So there's a lot of widespread education that is needed for people to understand the scourge of exactly what we are facing, what are we fighting here, and what really needs to happen on the ground. Because as a country, we're a country with great policies, but very bad execution on the ground. And unless we actually start looking at how are things executed and are we all aligned towards achieving this common vision. So it's not a fight between men and female, male and female. It's not a gender fight, but we are fighting against people who are gender abusers or people who abuse other genders for one reason or the other. So everybody needs to be aligned towards fighting this common enemy.
Okay, all right. I don't know if Morongwa is still with us. If she is, I'm about to wrap up. I thought I could take a point from you if you're there, but if not, okay. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take Morongwa quickly, and then I'm gonna have Professor to close in for us. I think then in that way we can wrap it up nicely. Morongwa, a quick one back to you. You said the points that you said in the beginning, and then you've listened to everyone. Just in closing your remarks.
Thank you very much, Penny. Thanks for everyone that has contributed to the dialogue. What I'm certainly going to say to just close off is the fact that the solution for GBV is in our hands, and for us to be able to, at least at the end of the day, eradicate this pandemic that is referred by even the president, is that we need to start agreeing that a part of you, wherever you are, contributes to GBV. And for us to eradicate it is to also get to think of what has influenced the perpetrator in the first place to do that, and what actions can you as an individual take from that. And overall, over and above, I'd really like to encourage the government and young girls to also consider empowerment programs, because if they're not going to allow you to take up space, if they're not going to listen to you, then make yourself be heard. At the end of the day, you are entitled to your own life. You are responsible for the things that you want. And if they won't let you do it, then do it yourself. If I'm not, I like actually referring to this phrase every now and then, that I am not okay if a fellow sister or brother is not okay. So if we tend to live by that, then I feel like at the end of the day, we'll be slowly chasing solutions to GBV.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Morongwa. Professor, I'm going to give the last, minute or so to you, sort of to just balancing it out for us, from a government point of view, where you sit in the Ministry of Women in the presidency, and then at the same time, as an activist who works in the space with children, to give us a sense of like a solution and direction of where we can go, so we can have a vision and something to look forward to.
Well, I think firstly, we must thank Afrika Tikkun for bringing us all together under one roof. This is actually what is needed, to have conversations, because if I'm at Orange Farm, I don't know what is going on at Deep Sloot. I don't know what is going on at Mfuleni. So under one roof like this is giving us a sense of hope that the struggle I'm in, I'm not alone. So we must thank this organization. I hope they will have more conversations with different communities. But also, I think as we are here, we all have to bring our own activism. We've had workshops with women magistrates who said, in the past, the police will come with a vague file and will throw it away, the case will be thrown out. But now we bring our own feminist activism. We say, call that family here. We want to talk to them, interview so that whatever is written down is within the legal framework. So if we bring our own activism, we are going to make impact at a larger community, because you have your church, your Stokvel, your women's group, your youth club, my women's club, and so on. But also what I like with this meeting, there's my generation, there's Penny's generation, we are already 3 generations, and that's how we're supposed to dialogue. Let's engage each other. Sometimes young people, when they are born, they think, oh, this struggle, I'm going to handle it. Nothing has been done before. But sometimes if we exchange views, you know, issues of resilience, they're very, very important. This struggle is not going to disappear overnight. We are fighting it to stop, but the patriarchal mindset is there in our systems, in our school, in our churches. So there will always be those who will hold on to it no matter what. But I don't think they can overcome a united feminist movement to take advantage of new policies that are more aggressive and decisive. I mean, even if you look at economy, the president have said 40% of procurement in this country must go towards females, young and old. So there have been bold decisions taken, which we must really sit down, analyze, be it looking at economic justice or the criminal justice or education with NSFAS and curriculum. I would say this battle is winnable today.
Okay. All right. So with all those great policies, we need to make sure that implementation happens, and then we are the ones who can hold our government and ourselves accountable to that. Professor, thank you so much. Thank you to my entire panel for being with us. Nehwoh Belinda, the Honorable Professor Minister Hlengiwe Mkhize, Deputy Minister, for joining us. Bongani Ngomane as well for joining us. Nick, my young people, Mamiki, MESULI, as well as Morongwa, Nontsigelelo, and Sizwe. I know MESULI wanted to say something. Unfortunately, I have been told that I have to keep to the time. You know how precious was in the beginning, but we really, really value your contribution, and I'm sure that you know you have a lot of burning issues, and if you've picked up a lot of stuff as well that you're going to take back and share, you know, with the rest of the young people that you work with closely. I think each and every one of us, you know, we need to go back, you know, even more committed to what we can do to contribute to ending gender-based violence. You know, personally, that's what I have done. Yes, I have my fatigue moments. Yes, it's exhausting, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. But you know, there's some days I just tap my sneakers and I get on the saddle and I get back to it. And I'm hoping that it will see this peace in this generation. You know, that we will have those gender studies, you know, as low as primary school, high school, so that by the time we get to the workplace, we would have addressed some of those issues. You know, we will have these open sex education. And then, yes, for the rest of the continent, it might be taboo that we're already having this conversation, but trust you me, I'm hoping that we're going to reap the rewards of that, you know, in this journey that we're in. So yes, as much as we're seeing the big numbers and the big losses of life, we're hoping that we'll reach a turning point of some sort where every member of our society knows that gender-based violence in its all forms, psychological, as small as catcalling, you know, to you know, patriarchy in the workplace and in the church and everywhere else, that we are all conscious and aware of it, and that we have a role that we can play to stop it. So on behalf of Africa Tikkun, I just want to thank all of you for being part of our online discussion, and I'm hoping you'll tell all your friends about our discussion today from all parts of the world. They'll watch and they will review, they'll share their thoughts, and everybody who wrote in on your questions, I acknowledge all of them, and I'm sure that most of your questions were also touched on and answered, you know, to that, and all your contributions are highly appreciated. Thank you so much to everybody for your courage, your attentiveness, you know, your timekeeping, and all the beautiful things that you did today. And I strongly believe that both men and women, you know, it's going to take both of us to fix our country. No one else is going to do it. You know, the LGBTQI and plus family, all of us from all different walks of life, we all have a role to play. So with that, bye-bye. Have a great day, further.